Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the February 12th, 2020 Cape Fear Public Utility Authority Board meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda is to determine a quorum, and I believe we have that, and I believe we have all present. So we will move on to the adoption of our agenda today. Your agenda is in front of you. We'll entertain a motion to adopt.
I move. So move.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now, we do have on our agenda, on my agenda, the board oath for Jonathan Barfield, so we're...
He's not here yet.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, he's, there's a forum that he's involved with today, and that's where he's at. So I move that he be excused.
Okay.
Second.
So I'm going to move on to the approval of our minutes. I'm sorry.
I move that he be excused.
Well,
Yeah.
He's not a member yet.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's going to try to be here later in the meeting.
Yeah.
And
So
we'll move
we
on
can
to the
swear him in.
approval of our minutes.
The minutes from the January meeting are in your packet. Need a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that brings us to our public comments. We have 6 or 7 speakers. I will ask you that if you are here to speak about our easement later on that's further down in the agenda, that you take this opportunity and sign up to speak, because that's the only time for public comment. So we appreciate you being here, but please make sure you've signed up. Yes?
Ms. Lake, if you'll come up and tell us who you are.
Tell us who you are and your address.
And she has I gave everyone a handout that she brought for us.
And we do, our speakers have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'll project. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Lindsay Lake, and I'm one of the co-directors of 350 Wilmington, a local environmental justice organization. I'm also a graduate student at UNCW, as well as a citizen of New Hanover County who lives in an apartment in the 28403 area code. I'm here today to thank you all for all that you're doing for our environment, specifically in regards to greenhouse gas emissions and waste reduction. From forming a new sustainability committee to instituting a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, it's clear that you all are taking your impact on the environment seriously. I am excited to see that you held a zero waste event and have begun diverting waste like paint cans and latex gloves from our landfill and recycling them instead. You've instituted an electrical vehicle pilot program to test the feasibility of switching your fleet over to electric vehicles and replace standard light bulbs with the more energy efficient LEDs. These initiatives are heartening and encouraging. Emissions reduction is more important now than ever, especially to folks in my generation. We will be the ones who inherit the earth, and we're all very concerned about what the planet is going to look like. 350 Wilmington's name represents the safe amount of carbon dioxide in parts per million within our atmosphere. In other words, this is a safe upper limit to avoid a climate tipping point. As of 2019, the current level has reached 415 parts per million. And while many initiatives are being taken on an international scale to curb this output, at the rate we're going, the world that my generation inherits will be a world that is largely uninhabitable, unrecognizable, and unimaginable to us now. Pumping water is always going to be essential, but we can already see the effects of climate change on water quality and availability in our local communities. The amount of energy that CFPUA uses to provide clean water to its customers is substantial. And so this means that our future is in your hands. And I hope that there can be greater resources and effort allocated to accelerating Wilmington's journey to a fossil-free future. Let's take action together right now to make sure that we as a community are prepared for the future. The City of Asheville partnered with Buncombe County in 2018 to develop a roadmap to become 100% renewable by 2030 for county operations, which includes their municipal operations. The entire community is slated to become 100% renewable by 2042. Similarly, the City of Durham voted unanimously in 2019 to adopt a resolution to become 100% renewable by 2050, which also includes their municipal operations. Resolutions have been introduced in 7 counties and 14 cities and towns in total across North Carolina. This is of the utmost importance to me as a community member, customer, and a young woman who is hoping to raise a healthy, happy family on this planet someday. So I'm here to introduce the following 100% renewable energy resolution for CFPUA, calling for a transition to be made by 2030. Together, we can control our future and ensure the protection and livelihoods of generations to come. Let's show the community that CFPUA will continue to be a leader in advocating for the environment. 350 Wilmington and all of our members, along with much of the community, will continue to support your efforts in ways that we can and look forward to continue working with you. Thank you again for this opportunity. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Mr. Munn.
Is this hers? Is this hers?
Yes, sir. Mr. Munn. Come up to the podium.
Please, again, give your name and address and keep your comments under 4 minutes. Thank you, Steve.
Good morning. My name is John Munn. I own Gavilan Enterprise LLC. It's a real estate holding company, and I'm the owner of the property that has an access easement for it to prevent it from being landlocked. Back in 2000, I actually purchased a property along with a couple of other parcels in the area. I actually built the home that one of the other speakers lives in today. So I was a builder and still am. In 2000, I purchased a property from Porter's Neck Company. The address then was 0 Futch Creek Road. It's going to be on your information as 831 Futch Creek Road. Porter's Neck obviously bought it from New Hanover County Water and Sewer System. With that deed, there's an easement attached to it that gives access to that piece of property. It's only 1/4 of an acre from Futch Creek Road. I've been in contact with Cape Fear Public Utility for the past 10 years. I've sat down many times with Karen Durso. I have got several emails from her, and I've sat down and we've had a conversation, and we all assume the same thing. The access easement was 100% for that property because all of the adjacent properties have driveways from their own neighborhoods, so they would have no use for it. So there is no reason to believe that that access easement was not on the plot plan for 831 Futch Creek Road. It wasn't until 6 months ago when my attorney, J.C. Hearn, was looking through the property deeds. There is nothing actually noted on my deed of this access easement. We all have the understanding that it is for the property, but it was not on the deed. So at this point, back in October, I contacted Karen Durso, and her email back to me was, I spoke to the pump station supervisor to inquire about your access easement for the 831 Futch Creek Road. He is not aware of any issues that would prohibit you from utilizing the access easement on the property. He just wanted to remind you that the property is owned by Cape Fear Utility and with the right to use for access for 831 Futch Creek Road. CFPUA crews must always be able to access your property and infrastructure. In other words, it cannot be denied access for them, but it can be used for access for your property. So obviously we all were under the same impressions. I've got several emails from Karen, and actually Karen has actually copied the attorney J.C. Hearn with the same information. So I guess we're here today, hopefully, as the planning board voted for it to be an access easement to keep the property from being landlocked. I guess it's a formality today that we're getting it finalized, but my question, and the only question I have is, if you would look, I don't think we have it up here. I keep looking up here because last time we had a picture of it. If you look at the adjacent properties and you look at the access easement, I don't think anyone can actually give a good explanation why else is the access easement there. It's only there for the piece of property in the upper right-hand corner, because all of the other adjacent properties, thank you very much, by the way, have access to the property from their own driveways in their own neighborhood. So this one is basically in between neighborhoods, but it's 1/4 of an acre.
All right, you've got about 10 seconds.
Okay, and it is located, it is a R20 zoned and it's buildable. I have no development plans in the future or immediate. I'm just trying to get our deed straightened out that it should be accessed, it should be on the deed as well. So I thank you for listening to.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your comments.
Ms. Walker?
My name is Nina Walker, and I am a resident of Bishop's Park, and my,
Wait till you get up there too.
Yes,
We
sir.
okay, I want to take advantage of my 4 minutes. Sorry about that. Okay, Nina Walker, and I live at 824 Wingfoot Lane, and,
There it is.
yep, there it is, yep. Okay, and I live in the house Mr. Munn built. And the reason I'm here is because I am very concerned about any driveway being built on that easement, because it would have to be built up. And during the big Hurricane Florence in 18, at least 40 to 50% of the easement area, if not more, was between 12 and 24 inches of water for almost a whole week. And the only reason I know it is because my whole yard was covered in water. And we were out there looking at it several times. And it was brackish water. It killed the fish in my pond coming in. So now if we put more hard surface and build it up, it's going to result in more flooding, and most likely it's also going to go all the way into the pump station area. My other concern is this easement is going to be used to build a house back there, so there's going to be heavy equipment driving over this. Who's going to be responsible for any material that goes into the creek? And the creek actually borders the whole easement. So building a driveway, you have to be 8 feet from the property line, and the easement is only 30 feet. But he's going to have to come in even further because the creek is right on the property line, and you cannot build right next to a creek. And then also it could result in material going into my pond that was dug by Mr. Munn himself before we bought the property. And that creek drains the water from Bishop's Park and then filters it, and it goes out to Fudge Creek. So it has to be clean water. And I'm talking a little fast, trying to get this all in my 4 minutes. The other thing that I need to bring to everybody's attention, the easement is actually in the Porter's Neck subdivision. The landlocked parcel is in Plantation Landings subdivision. Not in the homeowners association, but in the subdivision according to the county maps. And in Porter's Neck, if you have a tree that is more than 4 inches, you're not supposed to cut it down. And there's several large trees, and I didn't do my math quick enough this morning, but there's at least 1, if not 3, that is in the neighborhood of 7 to 8 feet circumference. I don't know what that comes to in the diameter, but I know that's more than 4 inches. So is that gonna be allowed? And also, who is responsible to make sure that he does not encroach on other property? And if there's runoff going into the creek, we had some problems with runoff coming into our pond before from another house being built. And some person from a water agency came out there and checked on it. And it was a lot of trouble. Will Cape Fear Public Utility be responsible for that? And that could result in some very negative press. So we just need to make sure that we are aware who's responsible for this. And also heavy equipment on that driveway. The driveway needs to be very compacted and hard, otherwise it could damage underlying water lines and sewer lines and things as such. So I guess those are my main things. I have no problem with like a moped or people walking down there, but heavy equipment or vehicles on a regular basis, because the drop from the street down to the creek is taller than me. I'm 5'4" on a good day. So it's going to be a tremendous buildup of this driveway. I think that's about, oh, one last thing. I have the deed here. Mr. Munn keeps saying he bought that from Porter's Neck in 2000. The warranty deed, this deed made this 12th day of January 2005 by Porter's Neck Company, Inc., a North Carolina corporation of 8204 Fascio Drive, Wilmington, to John Munn of 824 Wingfoot Lane. So it was done in 2005.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Mr. Oberly?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cyril Oberly. I live at 901 Saltwood Lane. If you could put up, oh, there it is right there. I took some pictures. I think you all have copies of it. My primary concern is how will it affect the runoff on my property, on Mr. Smith's property, which is 905, which is the house alongside of mine. Just this past week with the rains we've had, I have water in my backyard that overflowed the drainage creek. So if we disrupt the drainage creek in any way, I'm probably going to get a lot more water in my backyard. The elevation is about 7 feet below Fudge Creek. How much fill is it going to take to bring that up to level with Fudge Creek to make a driveway? And my other concern is, has anyone notified DOT and asked them if that's a good spot for a driveway, because it's right on the curve of Fudge Creek Road. I think it's going to be a hazard for the owner as well as the people that live on Fudge Creek Road, that use Fudge Creek Road. The speed limit on Fudge Creek Road is 35 miles an hour. People do 55 miles an hour. I wouldn't want to be coming out of my driveway that's hidden because of a curve and have somebody T-bone me. I also asked, before you grant this easement, if you could just visit the site and see that we're not making anything up. This is the way it is. It's not going to work very well, I don't believe. I understand Mr. Munn needs an easement to get to his property, and he should have that easement, but I don't know if it should be for a driveway. There should be another way to get to his property with an automobile. And as far as what Mr. Munn said, we don't have access to this easement in any shape, way, or form. From our backyards to get to the easement, we would have to walk through the drainage creek, which would require a bridge or putting on boots. It doesn't affect us at all. For me to get to the easement, I would have to go out of my driveway, up Saltwood Lane to Fudge Creek Road, and then make a right into his easement, which I would have no reason to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Ms. Chapman. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Suni Chapman. I live on Futch Creek. I'm representing 34 families. I'm the president of the HOA, Village on 5. We have so many problems already, and I realize that as planning committees, I mean, some of us are here to bring that human face so that you can see that a lot of us do get impacted. It's not just about a developer wanting to do certain things. We had so much flooding from the heavy rain. It surrounded and was inches away from encroaching into this man's home. It was up for sale. The day after that heavy rain was the day that the appraiser came. He now no longer has a buyer. These are things that are happening. It is getting worse. I was here for Florence. It is tragic. Not only the flooding, but between Florence and I can't remember the name of the last one. Florence was so big, but we've lost a lot of trees. I mean, Futch Creek is a disaster as it is. I have managed to get word out that some of the overhanging branches did get cut down. But, you know, and I'm grateful for that. But we need more help than that. We are losing homes. People cannot be able to sell these homes with any more water that is coming down. We've got planning committees that are agreeing to certain builders who are now going to crowd on 51 acres. This gentleman is a smaller part of land. But where do you think all this water is going? And where does Futch Creek end into? I think you have to look at the broader picture. I ask humbly that you get some more information. New Hanover County, Jim Imici, is the engineer, I don't know if any of you spoken to him. I know that you have received a letter from Barry Wagner, who does a lot of work on our behalf for Porter's Neck, and it's not as easy as a decision to make, because the gentleman whose land this is now is not a resident there, and I don't think he realizes the impact that anything, any land, any buildup is going to create. We all live, I've got 17 homes that are spitting distance from Fudge Creek. That is, I mean, it's crazy. You wouldn't believe it. It is like a river raft in a heavy storm or tornado. So please take some time. Don't rush into this. Get a little bit more information. Get some people in from other, like New Hanover County, that are aware of these problems. We're dealing with it not just locally, but with the state. So there's a lot of information out there that I would ask this committee take a look at. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker. Okay, that's it.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for your comments. We will move on to our consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda today.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we will move on to new business. First of all, our attorney's report.
I don't have a report, but I do need to go into closed session with the board to bring you up to date on a few things.
It's okay to move that to the end of the
Yes.
agenda.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Linda. Executive Director's report. Jim?
Thank you. The key indicators, environmental, safety, and customer service reports are all in your board packet. If you have questions, staff are here to answer them. I'd also like to mention that this will be the last meeting for our HR director, Denise Matroni, who is retiring at the end of the month. She's been here about 3 years and has done just a fantastic job for her, and she will certainly be missed, but we wish her all the best in retirement. Thank you.
Jim, thank you so much. Denise, thank you.
I'm here.
All right, we will move on now to our committee reports. First of all, executive committee meeting minutes from our February 5th meeting are in your packet. If there's no questions, we will move on to long-range planning committee. Larry?
Minutes of the Long Range Planning Committee meeting from January 30th are in your packet. And we have an item to bring before the full board. It's concerning the Fudge Creek Road easement. Mr. Stiers?
Good morning. This item is related to the public comments that were given this morning, some of those. So just to summarize, in November of 1999, Porter's Neck Company conveyed a pump station site. Could we go back to that aerial view that we had a little earlier? To New Hanover County, which was subsequently conveyed to the authority in 2008 at consolidation. And the pump station deed refers to an access easement shown in red here. Yeah. Shown as this red hatched area. Along the northeastern boundary of the property. I think you can see that cursor right there a little better. And this is a separate access from the pump station driveway that currently is being used by the authority. So the owner of 827 Fudge Creek Road, which is a landlocked parcel, requested use of this access easement to get to his property here from Fudge Creek Road. All of the deeds, none of the deeds of the individual parcels that abut the access easement reference this easement, so they really have no legal access to use it, authority to use the access easement. So, but because the abutting parcels could benefit from it. Our recommendation this morning is to convey the use of that access easement to all the properties that could potentially benefit from the easement to all the abutting parcels, not only to the requester at 831 Futch Creek Road.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
How would the other surrounding property owners benefit from that?
Well, they could go up the easement and get to Saltwood Lane there at 901, and then of course 831. The other parcels could, drive up, walk up the easement to get to their properties.
Thank you.
So this item only conveys legally the use of that access easement to the property owners. It does not authorize any improvements in the easement, such as building a road, cutting down trees, installing telephone poles, or installing a gas line or water and sewer infrastructure. That's a separate process that would come to the authority as an encroachment authorization, and we would review any requested improvements and then possibly authorize those at a later date.
Frank, a question on that. Who else besides the authority would have to approve any improvements on the easement? Is it New Hanover County? Is it somebody, land use planning?
If there is a stormwater easement on the pump station site, which we haven't confirmed at this point, New Hanover County, we could authorize improvements to our property, but if there's any other easements, they would certainly have rights to prohibit any other development or improvements within their easements.
But who makes the call on if whatever's being proposed to be built has stormwater implications? Who approves or disapproves that?
That would be the county.
So it would go before the county?
If they are requiring any improvements that require a building permit, it would be reviewed at the county level.
One additional question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I know in the city, there's a long-standing rule that post-construction runoff cannot exceed pre-construction runoff. And I'm not that familiar with the county ordinance, with their stormwater system or ordinances. But in the event that there was a gentleman that applied for a building permit, I would think that would have to play in, because from what we hear, there is substantial runoff now, or that creek can't handle the runoff and it floods its banks.
That's correct. If the improvements reach a certain square footage threshold that the county administers, he could be required to, obtain a permit.
At 1 acre or 10,000 square feet.
That's my understanding. It's a county.
Now, who would be responsible if permitting was required? Is that going to be on the property owner, or is that
That would
going to
be
be
the
on
property owner's responsibility.
Frank.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair. Can you show with your pointer which side of the easement the creek currently runs on?
The creek currently runs right down the side of the easement here. Seems to diverge and go right down through these property lines.
And the culvert that carries that creek across Futch Creek Road is 36-inch cement.
I don't. It is
reinforced
cement
pipe?
or reinforced concrete pipe. I'm not sure of the exact size of that.
And on the other side, where does the water that it flows from the
Right.
other side going towards Futch Creek?
Correct.
Or does it flow the other opposite?
It goes towards Futch Creek.
So what's feeding it from the other side? Is it another community?
This neighborhood. There is a culvert that you can visually see. It goes under the Futch Creek Road here.
So when it floods its banks, it's a result of the residual coming off of the other neighborhood flowing through there. And, sorry, one quick follow-up. Any construction means even a driveway would have to come in front of this board, or the CFPUA, or certainly our,
That would
any improvement at all.
come to
Sorry,
Jim or my level as
Right.
an encroachment authorization. However, that would be separate from any improvements that require a building permit that would go to the county
Would it,
or the state.
the process is, though, it would come to us first for approval. It would not be able to move ahead to any improvements unless it comes through you and Jim, correct?
Correct.
Well, that was one thing, this question you just answered was to make sure we had a clarification that only those improvements proposed within that access easement would come to us for approval.
Correct.
And we don't have jurisdiction to make decisions on what happens outside that easement. We can't, we don't have any jurisdiction to say what takes place on that lot. I don't think we have the ability to approve or deny anything that would take place on that building lot. We really only have concerns about what takes place on that easement and that it doesn't impact, it doesn't restrict the flow of water so that it backs up on our property or on the neighborhood's property. It puts us in jeopardy of having an obstruction on the property that we own. So we've got responsibility there, but we can't, I don't see how we can get into trying to think about or make decisions on these other land use issues about whether it's appropriate to put a building back there or any of those other issues. So, you know, I think it's a pretty simple question of there's an existing easement shown on the plan. It wasn't clearly defined in the easement, in the deeds of the property owners who had access to that. We've got a landlocked property and he's requesting access back to his property. And we will make sure that whatever's built on there does not negatively influence our property or put us in jeopardy of backing water up on anybody else's.
I don't know if you already addressed this, Frank. Is it possible to do, have we studied how flooding could affect our pump station already? Have we looked at
No.
elevations and have we sent out engineers or staff during flooding events to gather information?
No, we have not done that. Our pump station is situated on the higher side of the site. I did look at just some topography that was online there from the county website, but it's, you know, there's not a lot of high ground there actually. It's in a relatively low area. Our pump station site access and the top of the pump station is, you know, certainly out of the flood zone.
It's out of the flood zone.
Yes.
And we have that documented already?
Yes.
In case if they raise the elevation in that little.
It's out of the 100-year base flood zone.
So changing that access wouldn't affect our property at all?
It wouldn't affect
if they
our
raised
use,
up the
our use of
elevation
the property, but it would
that
be an improvement to our property. This is not allowing them to make any improvements. It's only, you know, as we were looking at this, cleaning up a housekeeping item where we had a deed with a access easement reference noted and drawn on the deed, but the only people that could actually use that access easement, the abutting property owners, had no reference to the access easement that was referenced on our deed. So this is just, you know, at some point, someone drew that so that other folks could use the access easement, and this is just to clear that up to allow them to use it.
Go ahead. I'm up, okay. I'm unclear as to what the access easement gives to them. So somebody can walk through there then to get to the property. Okay, can they drive a truck through?
Currently, it's up and down, and there's a lot of vegetation, pretty dense, and trees. So
can they cut the
you
trees?
can walk through it, certainly.
Could they cut through the trees so they can get in there?
Not unless we give them that.
So we have to
we would
give
have
permission.
to authorize them to make any improvements, including taking down trees, putting up a driveway, utilities, filling. It's We still own the underlying property.
Okay, so we're
This is
still
only
involved
easement
no
across
matter
our
what.
property. We're still involved, and there is a process that is documented, established, and to allow for encroachments on our property.
Okay, so the access does not give them the right to encroach.
Not with a permanent structure or improvement.
So Frank, adding the easement on the map is not going to improve anybody's drainage or detract from anybody's drainage. The problems that exist are the problems that exist right now. And anybody that wants to improve that is going to have to get permission from the authority, and starting with, first thing I would say is wetlands. If you're going to fill a driveway, you're going to have a wetland survey done and have all that done beforehand. Doing an elevated road is not going to change the elevation of the pump station, but could eventually, if you build a dike from the street to there, impact the drainage on Wingfoot Lane. That's obvious. But at the same time, there's a 15-foot easement on Saltwood where to the right or the east of this drainage easement, it seems to me if this easement's in place, it possibly could, you got an extra 30 feet there. If somebody wanted to put a driveway, there could be some drainage improvements at the same time. You've got extra, so it could be a benefit to 901 and all the Foot Creek across the road because you got an extra 30 feet to work there. Right now, I wonder if that drainage easement is where it is. It probably could be have moved, shifted across the property line. So there's some benefits to having an extra 30 feet there, but then also having the ability to tell them what they can and can't do, and make sure that it doesn't impact. The water's coming that way, and the water's coming that way. So, putting this easement on the map, I don't think right now is going to make one. It's not going to make a hill of beans until they talk about improvements. And they have a lot of hurdles to jump to do that.
We've gotten no requests for any improvements, of course, because this will be the first step.
Well, the issue of putting it on the map is not an issue. It's already on the map.
It's already on the map. The easement's there. Am I correct in that?
Yes, sir.
Well,
There
it's
is an
on
easement
our
from
map,
our
but
map.
it's not in any of the deeds to the adjoining property owners, so technically they don't have a right to it. But it's on our map, and that's the only reason we would be considering it.
But they're not going to redraw their deeds and show that easement. I mean, the easement's there. It has been there since Porter's Neck Company conveyed it to.
Well, we would have to execute an easement deed, and so it would be on the record.
Okay. The problem that hangs me up is it's called an access easement. And I don't know how you can interpret that many ways other than it's there for access for something. And it certainly it blows right by our pump station. That's confusing to me. I don't know when it was granted, if everything was there, if these folks predate that easement, or if it was intended to provide easement to some interior properties up there. Who knows? I don't know what the writer of it, conveyor of it meant, but it says access easement. I would think that the county would not just go about willy-nilly granting a permit to somebody to build up in there without looking at all of the things. I know the same group that does the ones for the city, and they're pretty tough. Yeah, there's a lot of hoops to jump through on this property before any construction can begin.
And that's right. I mean, this is more of a housekeeping issue for the
Right.
authority. I mean, there's
Right.
a chance we say, okay, yeah, this could be used as access, and nothing can ever be built. I mean,
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the county is going to check they're going to be all
That's
over.
exactly right.
And Dean's put his finger on it earlier too. It's a wetland. If they try and do anything inside that creek shed area there, I went out and took a look at it, and it's the creek is clearly too small the way it is right now, and it will quickly overflow, and I'm sure it does. I believe that. But any improvement on either side, well, to the west side of it there, it's going to require a lot of regulation that'll come in through the county. But the fact that we have the control measure here through Jim and Frank to take a look at this, I feel pretty comfortable there's a lot of eyes on this before anything could happen that would increase the existing problem there. On a separate track, I understand the angst that the homeowners are going through. It's clear that creek again is undersized, and even as you know, I was out 2 days ago, it was running full, and you could see that thing would easily overflow, especially with a 36-inch culvert running for there. So but that has nothing to do with what we're doing today. All we're talking about is allowing the access.
I think if you put it on the map, it's on the map, but they have their finger on the improvements, and it still gives Porter's Neck time if they're doing hydrological studies. You know, show Frank where the problem is. Again, they added another 30 feet. If you got to put another double round culvert, you got to make that ditch bigger. But I mean, that's not CFPUA's problems. If it's undersized, it's undersized. If we don't do anything, it's still undersized. It's still going to flood.
Right.
So, my question is, in some of these other neighborhoods, if this is going to add, and, if some of these other neighborhoods where the water's running down, are there vacant lots? If there are 10 vacant lots there, I mean, are they restricted from building? Or can I go in there and buy those 10 and build a house? And is that one house there going to be catastrophic, or is those 10 houses? So, I mean, there's a balancing act here, but I don't think, I think the extra 30 feet right there at the road could be a benefit too. Because you've seen it, if it's undersized, it's undersized.
Any more questions from Frank, for Frank? Frank, thank you. Yes, sir.
Long Range Planning Committee approved this to send or recommended approval of this to the board, and so on their behalf, I'd like to make a motion to approve the easement.
All right, this comes as a recommendation from Long Range Planning. Any more discussion? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right, thank you, Larry. Anything else?
No.
All right, we will move on to Finance Committee.
All right, the minutes from the February 5th Finance Committee regular meeting are in your packet for review, submitted for approval. You need to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
All right, and Mr. McLean's up with the financial report.
Morning, and while she's pulling this up, I just want to apologize. I'm a little under the weather, so if I cough or have to take a break for a second, please excuse me. So this is our summary statement of revenues and expenditures to date. Well, this is through the first 6 months of the year. Our total fund balance, our unrestricted fund balance number that we've been monitoring is around $74.6 million. We've come a long way in the past year and a half. We're deliberately trying to spend that fund balance down to around $50 million. We've spent quite a bit down, started around $120 million or so, and now we're right around $75 million. Kind of as we take that down, we're going to really be monitoring our capital spend to make sure that at the end of any given year we're not significantly below that $50 million mark. So yeah, I mean, there's this is a little deflated, I think, that number. I don't anticipate by the end of the year that number right there on the in row 13, that change in fund balance for the operating side, that 5.8, almost $5.9 million is going to be there. That's more than likely going to be a surplus, and we'll designate that surplus and restrict it and get it out of that unrestricted balance. So, what you could say today is we have probably around $80 million in unrestricted fund balance to fund around, 80 million less 50, so really $30 million in that unrestricted fund balance to fund around $45 million in PAYGO funded capital appropriations. Now, again, of course, there will be a new funding source in the next year when that $18 million kicks in next year. But it's certainly something that we'll have to monitor as we spend down that unrestricted fund balance number. So that's I guess the big takeaway there. This is our rate revenue variance analysis. These numbers look big, I guess, these variances here. Yes, we have experienced, inflated, or I should say, consumption and customer counts that outpace, obviously where we estimated them to be during the budget process. But this difference, I'd say, is due most in part, or not most in part, but is really contributed by the fact that we've billed early, so in January, billed things that we normally wouldn't have billed till February. That was a deliberate decision to kind of lighten our load, so to speak, in terms of billing when we go live with a new CIS that's scheduled to go live later this month, February 25th. So most of this is just a timing difference, I would say, or in large part. Again, this is our look at our kind of customer growth over the past 3 years. You can see that tick up there in that last kind of month right there, and again, that's due to that timing difference that I mentioned. I fully anticipate that next month and in the coming months to kind of return back to that regression line right there, that trend line. And this is a look at our consumption per ERU. Again, that's been rising over the past, I'd say, 8 or 9 months, 10 months, due to that, the increased consumption. It's kind of, last month kind of took a turn down as we, saw those consumption trends decrease. And it's kind of ticked back up due to that same reason, just because we've built a little more, kind of ahead of time. Gen X, PFAS related expenditures to date, about $10.2 million, and the majority of that has been ratepayer funded. Just a little bit of state grant funding there. And in terms of our other revenue sources here, we've already discussed the water and the wastewater revenues. Pretty close on our investment earnings. We've seen a little tick down in the interest rate environment. It's been a little volatile, but certainly manageable there. Our SDCs have really outperformed to date. We budgeted $4 million. And we have, collected, or I should say billed, 95% of that through January. I think that's about it. So are there any questions?
Yes, sir.
On the SDCs, did we underestimate the number of new connections, or was it the rate?
Right. So, as we'll get into
today,
in a
yes.
second, you're right. The rate is statutorily, or there's guidance in statute on how we calculate that. So I would argue that it's not the rate itself. It's an underestimation of the number of ERUs that were billed. I mean, we've been seeing growth for the past few years. We don't want to be caught in that situation where we're too aggressive with that growth. So we kind of undershot in terms of those ERUs that would be billed, the SDC this year. And every indication is for this upcoming year, I mean, all of our leading indicators, that we look at, inspections and plan reviews and those types of things, seem to indicate that growth is still on pace to be where it's been.
So it's a miss in calculation, but it's a good miss, in that it's more growth than we expected, rather than having the number wrong.
Right.
Well, the number was pretty accurate.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you, John. Jenna?
Okay, next up, item on the proposed fiscal year 21 system development charges.
I'll get that one kicked off. As part of the FY21 budget process, one of the things we look at early on is system development charges. And that's the fee that new connections pay when they connect into our system to reimburse our current ratepayers for the systems that are there and available to them. So as part of this discussion, it's worthwhile to go back and look at the ILA that the city and county wrote when we were formed in 2008, because it gives us some guidance on this issue. And there are two important things that we can take from that. One, the ILA tells us that growth should be paid for by new development, meaning that the people who are connecting should pay for that impact that they're having. And it also tells us that existing customers do not pay for capacity used by new customers. But what's interesting about our business is we have to build that capacity before people connect. We can't wait for a bunch of people to connect and then upgrade our plant or upgrade our pump stations. So we're always in a position of anticipating growth, paying for and providing capacity in our pump stations, our treatment plants, and our distribution and collection systems. The SDC then is intended to reimburse our ratepayers who have paid for those that infrastructure that's available for the new customers to connect to. And as John's going to get into, the value of the SDC is based on the value of the assets that we have in our system, not based on a calculation of what do we think it's worth. It's what is the value of the assets the existing ratepayers are providing. So since capacity has to be built in advance, and the ILA tells us that growth must pay for growth, the only way for that to happen is for new connections to reimburse our existing ratepayers for what they're getting. And that's the theory of the system development charge. And John's going to get into some more discussion about how we calculate them and what that looks like for fiscal 21.
Thanks. So staff has calculated the proposed SDC for FY21. There's some statutory guidance that came into effect back in 2018 that really clarifies how that fee is calculated. The proposed FY21 water SDC is $1,920, which is $40 higher than the water SDC that's currently in effect. And on the sewer side of things, it's $2,070, which is $140 higher than the sewer SDC that's currently in effect. So what we'll do is go through and review the calculation methodology, kind of discuss the kind of the philosophical basis kind of that Jim was referring to. And then talk about the next steps toward adoption of the SDC for FY21. I first wanted to start and just kind of place these proposed FY21 SDCs in context with where the SDCs have historically been. You can see this is inception to date, so fiscal year 2009 through FY21. And you can see that both on the water and sewer SDCs that they're lower than they were certainly when since inception. So just to kind of place those in context. So as Jim mentioned, this is really there's a couple of ways that growth pays for growth. We can debt fund growth projects. And spread those costs out over the future. We can have individual development, pay for its own share of the capacity that they need. But to the extent that those things don't happen, this is kind of that final mechanism where we ensure that those investments that have made by ratepayers in the past, for the capacity, for future growth, and those type of improvements that those ratepayers get reimbursed. And so it's really that final mechanism that provides for that intergenerational type of equity concept. So the SDC is the upfront charge that a new customer pays to buy into capital investments funded by ratepayers in prior years that will benefit those new customers. So this calculation only looks backwards. The statutes allow this method, this kind of buy-in method, this only looking backward method. It also allows for us to incorporate future development projects, growth projects, and you can also use a hybrid approach. But we've chosen to use this buy-in method approach. So therefore, any future development, the 10-year CIP has no impact on this calculation. So in theory, really what this calculation, how it works is we quantify the ratepayer equity in the water system for the water SDC and in the sewer system for the sewer SDC, and then we divide that by the number of accounts. Put that on a pro rata per customer basis to kind of spread that value to everyone. What this notion of ratepayer equity, what does that really mean? So, kind of the whole exercise is assigning a value to capital improvements that will benefit new customers that were paid for by ratepayers in the past. So we're really looking at, the value of our capital assets, the value of our water and sewer system, a depreciated value of those assets. And then we're backing out things that haven't been paid for by past ratepayers. So we're backing out debt, backing out conveyed property, backing out things that are grant funded, backing out things that were funded with contributions from the county or the city and developers and those other types of things. And then kind of that denominator of that equation is we then allocate that equity on a per customer basis, and what we do is we do that on a per ERU basis, and we use the same ERU counts for water and sewer that we're assuming in the rate development for next year's budget, so they're consistent.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
On that sentence up there about the equity value by the projected number of new, I understand the existing. Where do you get that? Do you deal with the city planning and county planning to see what's come before their TRCs, or?
Well, we do. We've had conversations in the past with county economists talking about growth. What we also do is we look at kind of the growth pattern that we've seen over the past couple of years. That's been about 2%, about a 2% ERU growth. It's about 2% on both the water and sewer side of things. So
in the next year, you correct that if there's any deviation.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
John, what? Thank you. Jumping off of that, Charlie's thought then, why is it then that every year, not every year, but in the last years, we've been so far off, we've outstripped it? If we're trying to calculate the growth, we just see these numbers, like here we are, halfway through the year, almost 60%, and yet we've collected 95% of our projected SDCs.
Sure, and kind of the approach in prior years has been a more conservative approach, right? So what we've done in the past is we've looked at the ERUs that were in effect around this time, right? February, March, that time frame, and we've locked that in. Now, knowing that there's going to be some growth, but in the interest of conservatism, in the interest of not being potentially in a deficit posture, we're more conservative there. Now, in a year where we know that rates are going to increase, okay, we want to be in order to minimize that rate impact, that rate increase impact to our customers. We really want to be as aggressive on these assumptions as is justifiable, in order to minimize that rate impact. So the approach has kind of changed this year. So what I've done in coming up with the ERU assumption for water and sewer for next year is taking that kind of that current ERU account and and I've inflated it by 2%. That kind of that recent history growth factor there. So I think that's justifiable, and certainly in a year where we know that we're going to increase rates, due to the Sweeney and the raw water debt service. Just trying to be as aggressive as possible.
So you're being as aggressive as possible in giving us a conservative estimate.
Well,
you don't want to miss on the other side. So.
Well, and that's true as well. But kind of the relationship between the SDC and rates is, everything that we collect through the SDC minimizes the increase to rates, right? So if there's that inverse relationship there, right? Just really trying to be as aggressive on those other revenue sources, not just the SDC, but investment earnings and those other types of things, in this year that we know that we're going to have to increase rates. So this is the calculation, okay, and I'll walk through it. So the starting point is the net investment in capital assets as of June 30th, 2019. That is a number from the balance sheet in our CAFR, okay? This is the most recently audited CAFR. And what this number is it's the depreciated value of our capital assets, and it backs out outstanding debt, okay? That's what that number represents there. The next step, because that $468 million, $469 million, that includes assets that have been conveyed to us from third parties. So we back out the depreciated value of those assets, okay? And so it's 468 or so million dollars less that 70 million. You're looking at $398.7 million or so. Since we calculate a water and sewer SDC, separately, we have to allocate that total system value number right there. And how we do that is we look at the proportion, inception of the authority to date, of the capital investments in our water and sewer system, okay? And to date, or I should say through June 30th, 2019, those proportions are, as you see in this column, those values C. So 47.36% for water and 52.64% for sewer. So we're using those proportions to allocate that system value, which is the depreciated value of our capital assets, less debt, less the outstanding debt, less the depreciated value of the conveyed assets. And so that you get those values at $188.8 million for the water and 209.9 or so million for sewer. The next thing we do is, because those numbers that I just mentioned, they have values in there that came from other sources besides ratepayers. Grants are in there. Contributions from the county are in there. Contributions from developers are in there. So what we do is we go and we've kind of developed this this kind of model where we look at the cumulative investment in the water and sewer systems that were funded by non-ratepayer funding sources, okay? And so the non-ratepayer funding sources for the water system, that's to date, has been 4.85% and 11.65% for sewer. And so we basically give a credit or reduce those numbers. Where's my little clicker? I don't know if this has a little light on it. Yep. So we reduce these numbers here by these percentages, right? So we multiply this number by 1 minus this percentage, okay, to get this 179.7. We multiply the 209.9 or so by 1 minus this 11.65%, and that's where we get this $185.4 million. So this is the equity, or these are the equity numbers, right? The ratepayer equity numbers in the water and the sewer system as of June 30th, 2019, okay? We then use those forecasted ERUs, like we talked about before, and we divide this number by that number, this number by that number, and we round up, I think, to the nearest $10, or round up or down to the nearest $10, and that's how we get these values here. Are there any questions there?
It's educational.
It is.
Well, good. Okay, I haven't included this in the past, but I thought this, so, okay, you know, there's all these components, you know, the A, B, C, D, and E, those different drivers, those different inputs that go into the calculation. I've done this analysis here. I haven't included this in the past, but I think this is kind of a good look at which of those inputs, or the degree to which each of those inputs are driving the change in the SDC since last year, right? And you can see that the majority of that, you know, so the $40 difference here and the $140 difference here, it's largely driven by the increase in the net investment in capital assets. So that first number, right? And we know that the trend in that number is going to be that it's going to go up, right? Because we've deliberately limited debt. We're PAYGO funding more, so that means that ratepayers are funding more. So there's more ratepayer equity in the system over time. The increase in appreciated value of conveyed assets, that works. You know, an increase in that value works to decrease, right? The SDC. I think last year the conveyed assets were around between 17 and $18 million or so, that's pretty significant. I'd say that's one of the higher years that we've had since our inception. The change in the allocation percentages, we've had, you know, I guess a little more investment in sewer since last year than water, and so you kind of see this trade-off here between water and sewer. And then here's the change in those proportions of the cumulative capital investment funded with those non-ratepayer funding sources. So that kind of grant credit concept, the contribution from third-party credit concept, and you know, these are pretty minimal, right? And so what that means is those proportions were pretty consistent with what they were last year. That's all that means. So during fiscal year 19, we didn't have a lot of non-ratepayer funding sources for the capital investment in 2019. And then the increase in ERUs, right, the higher that number gets, the lower the SDC. And so this is the impact of increasing ERUs from what was assumed in the calculation last year. And so when you total all those up, that's that net difference in the water and sewer SDC since last year. Any questions there?
Yes, Rob.
Thank you. John, I'm going to put it in really simplistic terms, because I know we've had this conversation for several years. It's just always a strange optic that every year we collect more and more SDCs, and then we turn around and raise the SDC rate. The answer to that is simply because we are plowing more money into the system overall. And so we have a better system, and that's what you're buying into. A hurdle in my mind that I'm still struggling with, maybe you can help me with, is it part of the money that has gone into the system to make it better are the SDCs. So it's only in our advantage to get more SDCs put into the system that then results in raising the SDC prices. Can you help me with that?
I think at the end of the day, you have this concept, just like you mentioned. I mean, this is really that last mechanism where, you know, growth pays for growth. So, I understand where you're coming from, certainly, but you're exactly right. I mean, as the value of the system grows and more of that is funded with ratepayer equity, with those ratepayer dollars, the value of the system goes up, and so the SDC goes up. And I'll emphasize again what Jim said before is, the SDC is not a fee that's set to recoup costs. It's not set to so it's this methodology that's set forth in statute, and we have these drivers that just kind of are what they are that drive the calculation, right? And I think I think that relationship is kind of going in the right direction. It just makes sense that if ratepayers are paying for more of these capital improvements, right, then that SDC continues to go up.
Jim.
So, John, as Mr. Zappel mentioned, that SDCs are paid, then there's more equity in the system. But as they're paid, there are also more ERUs that are also helping to offset that, which show up in line E of your calculation up here. So it's not just an equity thing. We also have more people that are part of the system.
Can you go back to your trend slide? Because to me, it looks like the SDCs were pretty stable, and then they acutely dropped by like 20%.
Right. So, go ahead.
I'm just curious those lines.
Yeah, we changed. The SEC calculation has seen some substantial changes over the past few years. Okay. So in 2017, I looked at kind of the calculation methodology that was in effect. It was very complicated, and in some circumstances, I thought that using a pure buy-in method, kind of that backward-looking method was more justifiable, given that kind of growth pace for growth framework that we have. So that was in 2017, okay, and you saw that big dip. Prior to that, 2016 and prior, we were factoring in the 10-year CIP in that. So I think that would probably explain for that big drop there. Then in 2018 came the law change. But I think since 2017, you've seen this kind of upward movement in both the water and sewer SDC, and I think that's primarily driven by the policy changes that were put in effect around 2017. We implemented that explicit debt limit, which means that more of the system, more of our capital improvements are being paid for by ratepayers.
Let me give you a little bit of the legal history on that. Around 2016-17, cities were sued because they used future, and their statute did not give them the ability to use future projects. And a lot of the cities have had to go back and pay millions of dollars to developers. Luckily for us, the statute for authorities gave us the right to use future. But John and I talked and discussed this issue and did not think that was the appropriate way to do it. And fortunately, the legislature wrote the law the way we thought you should do the buy-in method. And then, so that's one reason it dropped so dramatically. And the other reason is, one thing that's real important, we could use future now because they changed the law to cover what cities and everybody had done. They changed the law in 2018. We could add future, but we do not, because we still think the buy-in method includes what our assets are and what we own now, and not what we would have in the future. Because if you make them pay the SDCs, then you're also making them pay the rate to cover the future expenditures. So that's why we don't use future.
Can you explain to me the buy-in? Just a general synopsis of.
Sure, it's like like the initial fee at a country club, right? So there's all this outlay that's been done, and you're when that was initially done, you're you're benefiting from it, but you didn't pay for it. So this is kind of a, kind of a square up. So that's the, kind of the, I guess, framework or, concept of this buy-in method. It looks back, to those past investments that are benefiting these new customers, and just making sure that those new customers are paying their pro rata share. So it's reimbursing those past ratepayers for the investments that they've made on behalf of, for themselves, certainly, and then also for future growth.
So a new customer will pay a little more.
I would say that a new customer will pay their pro rata share of what past ratepayers have paid.
Then when will that drop off?
When would that drop off? Well, it depends on these different drivers, right? So,
and I think we all lose sight of the fact that we don't have a choice to charge this or not charge this. This is statutory. We have to charge it. And so we're only given so much flexibility in the calculation. But it's a statutory requirement that we charge this. So I think we need to keep remembering that we don't just charge this because we want to. We're required to charge this.
I think all you need to do is look at what would the authority look like if we didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've done that. I mean, so using these rates that I've calculated on a per ERU basis, and then kind of looking back at the number of ERUs that have been billed for water and sewer over the past several years, it's been about 1,600 ERUs. That's kind of the trend that we've been seeing. So applying this per ERU water and sewer SDC, multiplying it by 1,600, you're looking at about $6.2 million, and that's probably what we'll, something close to that is what we'll be factoring in to next year's budget. If that were zero, if that went away, that means that the average residential bill would go up by about $10 per 2-month period. So it has a direct impact on ratepayers there.
John, let me turn this around. What would it look like if the SDC were to go down? What would be the conditions that would surround that for the SDCs to go down?
I think if we were to start borrowing a lot more, that would certainly result in a downward trend. If we started seeing way more of our capital, sure, I'll make that kind of a universal statement. If we pay-go fund less, right? So debt fund, it could be grants, it could be contributions from others. So if kind of that funding mix were to change and be sustained over several years, you could see that go down. Also, growth, and it would really be kind of going back to this. It would be kind of growth in ERUs relative to this big driver here. These other types of things, yeah, so I mean, if you were to see other sources of funding, that would kind of manifest itself here. If we were to debt fund a lot more, now we have limits there, right? They're in policy, but if we were to debt fund a lot more, that would drive this, it would drive this number down, making this go, or not go up as much. So those would be the big drivers there. Maybe in a given year we have a huge conveyance from a developer, right? In the $40, $50, $60 million range. We've never experienced that type of thing, but yeah, that would certainly result in
In essence, if we saw no growth or less people signing on, and we went out and borrowed more money, that would drive the SDC down.
Absolutely.
All of which is bad for the organization.
Sure.
Drive rates up.
Yeah. Okay.
John, what are our next steps?
Sure. Okay, so the statute requires that we publish this calculation out on the web for 45 days. So planning on publishing that out on March 2nd and leaving it out through the end of April. That's over 45 days, but yeah, there's a spot on the website where stakeholders can go in and provide comments. Those comments will, well, in the 2 years that we've done that, we've never received a comment. But there is that mechanism that's in place. To the extent that we receive comments, we will bring those to the May 13th board meeting. We will also have a public hearing at the May 13th board meeting where members of the public can come and comment on the SDC. To the extent that the board thinks that any public comment either provided through the web or in person on May 13th are appropriate, or any other thoughts that the board comes to a consensus on and recommends to us to go and actually change the calculation, we can then do that. We can bring it back at go through that exercise, bring it back in June, and then adopt it at the June meeting. If there are no changes recommended by the board to the calculation, we can adopt it at the May 13th meeting.
Kevin?
So if we made a change after the public hearing on May 13th, it would not have to go back out for public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. Because I thought, didn't we, a year or 2 years ago, there was some discussion about trying to change it, and I thought one of the things you said was, well, we can't because it has to go for public hearing again.
No, the public hearing is a one-time thing, just like the publishing out on the web is. That's, I guess, the public's one chance to voice those concerns, and then the board will, give credence to those or not if they so choose.
I just want to comment. I've never been more comfortable with this calculation than I am now. I mean, the old system, I couldn't even understand it. At least now, when somebody comes to me who's been a customer for years and says, those developers are coming in and not paying, I can say, oh no, they're paying. They're paying the same that you paid over the years you lived here. And they're paying it all at once. It's as fair as we can be. There is an estimate, and it's, of course, the projection of the SDCs, but it corrects the next year, which is what's happening this year.
Technical question while we're here. So the fees and rates and pricing, does this framework apply timing-wise and statutorily? Same thing, we have to announce. If we change, how does pricing announcements work?
Oh,
in terms of just
rates and our other fees?
Yeah.
It just takes board action, and we'll publish those out on the web, but there's no public comments or anything like that. There is a chance or an opportunity for the board at the the public hearing for the budget, where they can come and make comments on the the spend side of things as well as the revenue or rate side of things. But there's not a similar requirement for all rates and fees to have that to be published out on the web for 45 days, that type of thing. So yeah, this procedure is specific to the SDC.
But the statute that affects how we make our decisions about rates and fees and the timing of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just if you could just clarify how that works.
What we do is we develop our rates once a year as part of the budget development process. And as I mentioned again,
The statute doesn't speak to that. It's just our internal budgeting.
Right. Well, there's a timing for when the budget has to be adopted. Has to be adopted, I believe. I think it's no later than June 30th. So we traditionally done that at the June board meeting.
Got it. We do put the budget on the website and put it out at the libraries in different places.
And we have a public hearing. A public hearing on the budget is required.
And historically, nobody shows up. We've moved it to evening, we've moved it downtown to the county courthouse, nobody shows up.
This subject always creates a lot of conversation. The good news is we've got about 3 months left before the public hearing. So this obviously can come up again over that period of time. If there's any questions, allow yourselves to think about it. But before we give John direction on publishing this on the website, I'd like to drop back just for a moment to an agenda item that we pushed down. I want to welcome Jonathan Barfield to our meeting, and I think we need to have a swearing in of John to the board.
Mr. Barfield, if you'll come up to the front.
First time I did this was going into the Navy.
It's been a while. You've taken a lot of oaths, haven't you?
And you haven't changed a bit.
I, Rob Zappel. I, Jonathan Barfield, do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the constitutional laws of the state of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of my position as a member of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority.
All right.
And I'll give Kim a copy of this. Thank you. Me? Oops, sorry, you need that, don't you?
Jonathan, thank you. We look forward to your insight and your help on this committee, on this board very much.
Looking forward to being a participant. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And just for the board, so the board knows, Jonathan will be filling the committee spots for Pat Cusack, and he'll be on the Human Resources and Communications Committee until we decide to shake up the committees next year. So thank you very much. We're glad to have you. Now, I think it would be prudent to entertain a motion to allow John to put this SDC information on the website. Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Thank you very much, John.
Thanks.
And now, anything else, Jennifer?
No, that's it for finance.
All right. We will move on to Sustainability Committee. Jessica?
Yep, the Sustainability Committee met January 30th. The minutes are attached. We discussed our LED light bulb replacement program. We also discussed the electric vehicle program. So we've got a mechanism now when we know we're bringing in new vehicles to the fleet. The possibility of using electric will be considered as our fleet managers look through things. So we've got 10 vehicles that we know we need to replace in the upcoming year, and I think 2 to 3 of those are going to be considered for electric vehicles, so that's great news. We also discussed the possibility of reintroducing tiered pricing and looking at block pricing and how that could affect conservation from the consumer standpoint. I know in our infancy, CFPUA used to have sort of 2 different sets of price depending on your first volume of water that you use as a consumer versus additional water. So I think we're putting together a little working group to revisit that issue. And one of the reasons I was asking about timing is I think we would be pressured to try to do it this year if we could demonstrate to ourselves that there would be a conservation value in doing that type of pricing. But we may just logistically be running short on time. So we'll report that out. So I would move that we adopt the minutes from our meeting.
We can?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks so much.
One thing I would suggest is we had a speaker today that went through a lot of work and put together a proposed resolution for adopting a goal of 100% clean energy for CFPUA by 2030. And I suggest that y'all take that back and come back with a recommendation to the board.
Absolutely. We look forward to doing that.
All right.
Thank you. I should mention that. Excellent.
All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to our old business. Is there any old business to come before the board?
Mr. Chair, actually, can I go back in the reports we had, back to the dashboard? There were a couple of questions I had written in my notes that we kind of ran over. I didn't get a chance to raise.
Certainly.
Just a couple of clarifications. One has to do, Jim, with the growth bar chart. So we saw a tremendous leap, almost 100% from December to January with the new meter installations. Was there a particular, is that just a one-off, or is it?
Things tend to slow down in December with construction, so it probably just was a slow month of December, and then things resumed in January would be my my sense.
I see, okay, there's no red flag or anything
No.
there, or green flag. Second question I had was had to do with the water treatment plant flows. It's the next page there from Sweeney. I see we're averaging about 13.1 million gallons a day. Do we have a breakdown of how much comes from the pump station from Lower Cape Fear Water and Sewer, and how much comes from our Kings Bluff, the CFPUA pump?
We don't on a month-by-month basis. We can start reporting that out, but typically in the winter, we'll take our line down for maintenance and we'll draw more from Lower Cape Fear. But over the year, we try to average it out so that Lower Cape Fear has consistent budgeting. It really is not a big cost difference for us one way or the other. We purchase it from Lower Cape Fear. We pay their retail price for it. If we pump it ourselves, we pay power. So it's really just a balancing act of keeping up with both systems.
I see, and also in balancing it with the sewer, the outflows. Maybe this is just regular, and it just caught my eye that the effluent flows were at average of 8.82, balanced against an inflow of 13.1. So are we really losing 5 million gallons a day between that, or am I seeing that? The difference, excuse me, about 4.28 million gallons.
You mean
The effluent flows from the north side plant.
Oh, versus the Sweeney flows?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's several different things. Not all of the Sweeney water goes just to north side. Some goes to south side. We have well systems that contribute to our plant flows as well.
Yeah.
And there's also I&I that we get in our collection systems. A lot of things make those numbers not equal out exactly.
Again, seemed like a lot of, a lot of gallons flowing away there.
Yeah, north side and south side, you'll get wastewater, you'll get closer to that number.
You think, yeah. All right.
Irrigation.
Yeah, it's one of the, okay, sorry, just caught my eyes, I was going through it. Thanks. That was all, Mr. Chair, thank you for allowing me to go backwards.
Thank you, Rob. Any other old business? All right, I want to thank everybody for being here. Jonathan, again, thank you for agreeing to serve on this board. And we are going to go into closed session to discuss CFPUA versus Comores. So I will entertain a motion to go into closed session. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, let's take about